Part 1 Lesson in Life number 316, or maybe it should be number 1. Don't mess with an angry witch. That's what Joey thought, with good reason. Joey Richardson was 15, was tall for his age, but otherwise unremarkable. He was a B student, if that helps. His folks thought his grades should be higher, but that's a universal constant. He has a dad, Brian 42, who worked for Boeing as a machinist and makes a good living. He has a mother, Miranda, who claims to be 33 but who is 35 and was an English teacher at Parkway High School. He had, but didn't rejoice in, a younger sister, Katie 11. Joey considers her a real brat. But then he was prejudiced as he was her brother. Katie, of course, was his father, little darling. Joey was his mother's favorite. They lived in an older suburb of St. Louis in a nice house and got along with most of their neighbors. Except the Kratzes. But nobody got along with the Kratzes. Pretty normal, you would say. Even boring. And you would have been right, except for Halloween. That's when everything changed. Dad, do I really have to take the brat trick or treating? Joey whined. Yes. Now no more back talk. And don't call your sister Katie a brat. Why not? She is. And Dad, she's too old for trick or treating. Katie pinched him, and of course his father didn't see it. He never did. Listen, as my own dad said to me, son, you'll never be too old for your old dad to take his belt off to reason with you. Joey nodded. Reason, as usual, prevailed. But Joey sulked. He would be late for the real fun. His friends had decided to toilet paper some houses. That was a lot more fun than taking his kid sister around from door to door extorting candy. Katie was grinning an unbecoming grin of triumph. His fists itched to punch her. But foolish though he might be, Joey wasn't that foolish. His bottom glowed with remembrance, thinking about the last time. His dad didn't have a cheap imitation leather belt. So with his sister disguised as an angel. Bite me, Joey thought. He took her around her to extort candy from neighbors. Katie was in hog heaven. His mother smiled sympathetically at him, but she didn't wish to argue with her husband unless it's something really important. Miranda was an attractive, slim, red-headed woman. Joey had red hair, too. My 2 carrot tops, his dad called them affectionately. His mom didn't like it. The trick or treating took forever, as Katie would often go to the same house twice, counting on people either not remembering or having a different person open the door. She was usually successful, and so she had a bulging sack when he was finally allowed to take her home. She was greedily eyeing her loot. Of course his friends had not waited. Every house in the neighborhood was decorated with toilet paper, unless it belonged to one of the boys' families. Joey was bumming big time. He was really looking forward to going around with rolls of toilet paper. What a fun! As his granddad would say, it would be a gas. Joey giggled at his own joke as usual. Regretfully, he was about to put the toilet paper away when he saw they hadn't done the embrusters across the way. He wasn't sure why. They didn't have any kids. Maybe they were afraid of Mrs. A. Some kids thought she was kinda weird, and she did get mad easily. Joey couldn't see why they would be scared though. She was a pretty, dark-haired woman of 30 or so who wrote books that were kinda copies of Harry Potter. She did have a bad temper. She got really mad when anyone said her books were rip-offs on Rowling's. Mom didn't like her very much as she thought Mrs. O was a flirt. So here was his big chance. Stealthy, he approached the Embruster house. He started gleefully wrapping toilet paper around trees and bushes. Then Mrs. A's cold voice came from behind him. Just what do you think you are doing, young man? Busted. He gulped. I'm just having a bit of Halloween fun, Mrs. Embruster. She snorted. Fun. Fun you call it, to wrap toilet paper around my prize azaleas and trample my garden? Kids today just don't have the proper respect for the old traditions. You should read my books and then maybe you would learn. Joey interrupted unwisely. Remember the red hair. I would rather read the real thing, Harry Potter. My mom says you are just a copycat. Joey jumped back. Mrs. A's eyes were actually glittering. That tears it. You and your mother need to be taught a lesson. A sinister grin came over her pretty face. I have just the thing. She started chanting. For 3 days, when the full moon begins its rise, until midnight of the third night, you shall shed your shape and change into your mother's living mirror. She threw a powder at Joey. It was creepy, and Joey ran away even though he knew she was only blowing smoke. Of course he kept his mouth shut. Well, the days went by and he kinda put it out of his mind. Joey's parents were watching TV. Joey went by his sister's room. Katie was experimenting with makeup to trying, in vain he thought, to look less repulsive, and Joey decided to play Tomb Raider. Hey, as all the teenage boys who play it would say, it teaches you a lot of stuff, like what to do when being chased down an ancient tomb by ghouls or something. You never know when that kinda of thing might come in handy, right? Then Joey felt a really creepy, crawly feeling. He wanted to scream but couldn't. It was like all the bones and muscles in his body were rearranging themselves. Then the sensation disappeared. Joey felt his clothes fitting funny on his body. He staggered to a mirror and gasped, horrified. Somehow he had become his mother. Impossible! He fell back in shock on his bed. He shook his head and his mother's long red hair swirled. He pushed it out of his face. He crept to his door and opened it a crack and listened. All clear. A thought struck him. Had his mom become him? He had to find out, so he tiptoed to the head of the stairs and leaned over the rail. Thank God! Everything was normal. His mom and dad were cuddled on the couch. He ran back to his room. Hey Mom, why are you wearing such weird clothes? Asked Katie, glancing up. None of your business, brat, he said with his mother's voice. Katie pouted and slammed her door. That's one good thing, at least he could tell his sister where to go. Back in his room, Joey paced up and down. This felt really weird. He could feel breasts swing free and his hips were too wide. How does Mom stand it? He wondered. More important, how did it happen? Mrs. Ambruster. Halloween. The curse. He had to see her right away. He let himself out of his window onto the back porch as he usually did when he wanted to sneak out of the house, but his shoes were too big and he stumbled. My God, I am going to fall off the porch, he thought, panicking. He slid towards the edge but at the last minute grabbed the gutter and clung desperately. Mom, you need to be in better shape, he said, gasping. He edged successfully to the downspout and slid down. He ran over to the Ambruster house, panting in his mom's 33-year body. A far cry from being 15 and an athletic teenage boy. When he got closer, he heard a nasty chuckle and Mrs. A stepped out of the shadows. I've been expecting you, Joey, or should I say Miranda? You did this to me. You are really a witch. Mrs. A nodded. One of my better efforts. Change me back now. Forget it. As far as I am concerned, you are stuck. Tonight, tomorrow, and the next day until midnight you will be your mother's identical twin. Joey was relieved to hear he wouldn't be his mom's double forever. He gulped. Well, I guess I can live with it. Not quite 3 days. She snickered. You change every month. Every full moon. Upchuck, thought Joey. But you can't do this to me. Sure I can. I already have. But what can I do? I can't tell my folks, they would freak out. The whole world would freak out. Not my problem. Good luck, Miranda. With a merry wave, Mrs. A disappeared back into her house. Joey started crying. What was he going to do? He almost got run over as he crossed the street. He paid no attention to drivers' yells. God, was it hard to climb up the porch in this body, but he made it. He felt bruised all over from the roll down earlier. He sniffled, feeling very sorry for himself. Tomorrow was Friday and a school day. He was doomed. He would be a freak and a laughingstock. He would be laughingly known as the boy who was his own mother attending classes in junior high. He would lose all his friends. The papers would make fun of him. Adamantly, he shook his head. No one must find out, especially his rotten sister. He began to make plans. If you want to make a teen smart, just set them up so they have to think to avoid being embarrassed. He would call himself in sick tomorrow at school. He would hang out somewhere tomorrow and tomorrow night, but where? Hey, he would visit his Aunt Jane. Her mother had been promising to do it for months. Joey gulped. He would need woman's clothes. He would need to wear his, mom's clothes. He snuck into his parents' bedroom and distastefully got bras and panties and clothes for 2 days. He might as well wear what he liked on mom if he had to go around as a copy of her. So he made his selections. My God, his parents were coming upstairs. With full arms he dashed for his bedroom. Phew, he made it. Good night, kids. Katie gave Dad the usual suck-up kiss. Joey grunted, hoping his mother's grunt sounded like his own. It got by. Phew. Damn, he would have to get up early and sneak out of the house and then back in again after everyone left. Joey woke up to the incessant alarm. God, what a weird dream. Imagine becoming a wormmom. Yuck. Then he felt his breasts swing. Groan. Not a dream. He sat down again to take a piss. Yuck. He hurried on his mother's exercise clothes and dashed out of the house, leaving a note on the table saying he had gone to school early for basketball practice. Suspicious, him doing anything early, but it would have to do. He had to print it on his computer, as his handwriting was now his mom's. Hey, that might come in handy, Joey mused. Time enough for that later. The sports bra helped control his breasts. Thank God. He didn't worry about his mom missing her exercise stuff, as she hadn't gone to the gym in months. He heard more than once his dad complaining about the waste of money. Soon his parents left for work. He was even more grateful than usual that his mom didn't teach in his school. His sister skipped out of the house to the bus stop with her usual self-satisfied smirk. God, did he need a cup of coffee, he thought. Then he brought himself up short. I don't drink coffee, but that's what he wanted. He went back into the house and finished off the morning coffee and started to feel better. He absently poured himself his mom's diet breakfast. Yuck. But it is too much trouble to make something. He took a deep breath. Do or die. Now, how did his mother talk to her sister? He called Aunt Jane. Jane, darling, how about spending the weekend together? Boy, did he sound like Mom. Sounds great, sis. Are you off from school? He answered in the affirmative. Then Joey called himself in sick. Missing school, one good thing at least. He typed a note saying his was at Aunt Jane's until Sunday. He visited her often, as she was his favorite person. His parents would be glad to get him out of the house, so they wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Whatever that meant. He got a suitcase from the basement and packed his things, or rather his mother's things. Jane's battered Civic pulled up and she sprang out. She was a perky 28-year-old woman, also with red hair. She was a stay-at-home housewife. Her husband John managed a grocery store. She came in all gushy and Joey endured an embrace and a kiss. It will be like old times, sis. Joey smiled weakly and thought, I doubt it. Jane looked at her critically. Miranda, don't you want to comb your hair and put on makeup? Had a bad night, Joey mumbled. Soon with Jane's help she looked presentable. Jane was a terrible driver, but they somehow made it to her house. Over some more coffee Joey listened and Jane chattered away, not at all sorry to do most of the talking. Joey absorbed useful information. Joey knew green eyes got wider and wider. Wow, he didn't know his mom. His mom had been such a wild and crazy girl. He wasn't sure he wanted to hear some of this stuff. His mom had smoked pot for 4 years, had tried coke on occasion and had slept with 4 men before she married his dad. Jane decided they should eat lunch out some chick place. Here goes my allowance, thought Joey. He dressed clumsily behind closed doors. I always like that outfit on you, sis. I don't understand why you don't wear it more. You look so sexy. Thanks, said Joey with a smile. He had got Mom's body looking great if he did say so himself. This emerald green jumpsuit really was hot, as are the shiny boots. He had a little problem with the 2-inch heels, but soon got the hang of it. At least they were not spikes. They ate at some frilly tea room and did his aunt fuss over the check. They each paid their share down to the penny. He thought the waitress would go crazy, but she seemed used to such fussing. Joey was then dragged on a shopping expedition. Boring. But he kept smiling. Jane couldn't believe it when he didn't buy anything. He had a pleasant dinner with Jane and her husband Jake. Boy, it was sure odd to be treated politely by him instead of like an escaped criminal. His uncle had never had liked Joey since he scratched Jake's new car with his bike. Some people sure hold a grudge. He made sure he answered the phone and once assured his mother that Joey was being a perfect gentleman and behaving himself. He found that his aunts and now his voice were enough alike on the telephone to fool an unsuspicious Miranda. He spent another night in this duplicate of his mother's body. The next day he talked Jane into driving him back when he knew his folks would be at church. It wouldn't do at all for Aunt Jane to meet both Mirandas. Now what to do until midnight? He went to see an NC-17 movie. Wow. Hot stuff, except well, it really was kinda boring. He went home when he thought the coast was clear and waited for his mother to leave the house for her usual Sunday night chat with the gossipy Mrs. Jones. He started up the stairs. His dad came out of the study. "Miranda, I thought you were visiting Mrs. Jones?" Joey smiled weakly. "I just got back." That was quick. Does the old gossip have laryngitis? Joey laughed a tinkling female laugh, which annoyed him tremendously. "While you're here, let's go over the expenses. We've been spending too much on junk food. No more pizzas or sodas for the kids." Joey's heart sunk. This was all he needed. He had to endure his dad talking finances until he could escape upstairs. He hardly was in his room when his mother came in the front door. She went into the family room. Brian looked up with a wrinkled frown. "Did you change clothes?" he asked, puzzled. "No, why? I thought you were wearing something else." He shrugged. "No matter." Poor Miranda got in trouble later in the week when she bought the kids pizza and Pepsi. She tearfully kept telling her husband that he hadn't told her not to buy them this month. Of course he knew better. She had just given in to the kids' pleading and pretended not to remember. Sometime he wondered about his wife. Well, Joey got through the first full moon period, what he going to do with the next? He couldn't visit Aunt Jane again. Even she would get suspicious. Meanwhile his mother and dad were concerned about another matter. Miranda noticed that some of her dress clothes and her warm-up outfit had been worn and wrinkled. "How did it happen?" "I know I didn't wear them." Brian frowned. "Katie knows she's way too small." He paused, horrified. "You don't suppose our son is a cross-dresser?" Miranda said. "I hope not." They decided to keep an eye on Joey and her clothes and were relieved that everything seemed normal even after they had set several traps to see if he would sneak into their bedroom and take them. Brian even installed a TV camera he bought over the internet. Thank God they didn't see Joey taking any clothes. Brian then accused his wife of being forgetful again and upsetting them for nothing as she just forgot wearing the clothes. She again cried, as her husband didn't look like he believed her. But both were relieved and shut down their surveillance. As the dreadful day of the full moon approached, Joey got more and more desperate. Several times he groveled for Mrs. Ambruster and only got laughed at for his tearful begging. Poor Joey felt like he was trapped in a teen summer movie. I was a teenage wormum. Who would be in it, he wondered morbidly. Sarah Michelle Gellar would be his girlfriend Grace, Freddie Prinze would be him, Sarah Jessica Parker the witch, Sandra Bullock his mom, Bruce Willis his dad, and he got stuck trying to find an actress as revolting and repulsive enough to play his sister. As luck would have it, the first night he just laid low in his room as his folks went to a movie. Before they got back he went into the bedroom and got some clothes. The next day was Friday. He would just call himself in sick at school. Friday night he should be okay as his folks had a big to-do as there was a big party at Dad's work and they would be out to the wee hours of the morning. Both would have a bit of a head Saturday and would sleep late, and he would sneak out of the house and leave a note he was spending the day and night with his friend Mike. He would just hang out in vacant house for sale a couple of blocks down. He knew how to get in. He knocked on wood. He sure hoped it would work and his folks wouldn't call. He had already asked Mike to cover for him. Mike was delighted as he was sure Joey was up to no good big time. The night came and his there as a knock on the door. Joey's heart thundered and his blood ran cold. "Dad's in our bathroom, dear. Mind if I use yours? I'm running really late and your dad's gets mad." Joey dived under the covers. Through them he tried to make his voice deeper. "Okay." His mom entered wearing her robe and headed for his bathroom to take a shower. She hated to go to these gatherings and was as usual delaying things. As the water started running, Joey dashed out of bed. Shit! He forgot Mom's running shoes for tomorrow. He dashed into the bedroom with her exercise outfit on. Oh, no. His dad just left their bathroom. His dad frowned. Busted. Joey thought helplessly. Life couldn't get any worse. Yes, it could. Damn it, Miranda, we're running late and you haven't even put on your dress. He gestured to the formal gown laid out on the bed. Just don't stand there with an open mouth. Do it. I'll help. When his dad said jump, people asked how high. He was no one to trifle with. Joey found his mom's gown sliding on his unwelcome curves. Nervously, he sat on the bed and rolled silk stockings on his new legs. He had seen Mom do it often when he was little. Now get your makeup on. With trembling hands, Joey did his best. He managed with only a little trouble as he and his sister Jane had played dress up a month ago. Good, he grunted as Joey fearfully slid into dress heels. What if Mom should come in? Let's go, ordered his dad, and Joey staggered a little on the 3-inch spikes. Miranda, have you been drinking? Dazed, Joey shocked his head. Grounded forever, a freak forever. Doomed. Somehow they made it to the car. Just as they drove away, Miranda came out of the shower and went into her room. Brian was gone. She looked in the garage. The car was gone. Well, with his temper, he must have got tired of waiting and left without me. Good. Even though she knew he would sulk for weeks, she hated those stupid parties. He always wanted her to wear something sexy, and she felt like a piece of meat as men would drink too much and would accidentally bump into her, and then Brian would accuse her of flirting. For God's sake. She sat down in her room to read. Part 2. In the car, Joey was fumbling with his seatbelt. He looked down. My God, am I ever showing cleavage? His face got red with embarrassment. What am I going to do? I don't know how to be Mom, especially in front of all those strangers. His dad at least didn't notice anything. He kept complaining as usual how long it took Miranda to get ready. Getting out of the car, Joey was shaking with an attack of nerves and he stumbled a bit in the heels. His dad gave him a disgusted look. Oh, no, I'm busted, thought Joey. Miranda, have you been drinking? Joey gulped. No, just nervous. You know how I hate these things. Brian snorted. I never said you had to like them, just go to them. It's an important function with union officers and company officials meeting socially so we know each other and don't become them and us. You know I am the president of the union, so try not to disgrace me. Joey gave an uncertain smile, looking if he but knew it, just like his mother usually did on these occasions. A number of men and women were already there. Everyone soon posed for a group photo. Drinks were passed out and Joey gulped one nervously. It tasted good and he felt better. So far so good. Nobody guessed he wasn't the real Miranda. He refused to think what would happen when they got home and confronted his mom. He had to depend on luck, which hadn't quite failed him yet. Ouch! Somebody pinched his butt. Joey whirled and punched the man in stomach. It was Mark, the union treasurer. The surprised man let out a gasp. Keep your hands to yourself, you pervert, he said angrily. Imagine a guy pinching a teenage boy. Of course he wasn't a teenage boy right now, but even so, pinching his mom was bad. Everyone stared at them. His dad came over and steered Joey away. For God's sake, don't make a scene. Me? Tell your buddy Mark. He was the one who started it. I'll talk to him. But what's got into you tonight, Miranda? You're acting like a kid. Brian wondered what the hell was with his wife. Miranda usually was so mousy at these functions. God, she must be really nervous. Look at the way she is eating. She looks as bad as Joey with the way she is shoveling it in. And is she ever gulping her drinks? Wipe your mouth, Miranda, and take it easy on the drinks. Guiltily Joey did. He loved his mom and didn't want to disgrace her. Shit, he had to go to the bathroom. Some other wives went with him. Good for you. I always wanted to slap someone at these stupid functions. Right. I don't blame you for drinking, said another. Mark's wife came in and the buzzing stopped. Joey was surprised when she embraced him. I apologize, Miranda dear. Believe me, my husband will really hear it from me on the way home. He must have done something truly dreadful to make you lose control like that. She looked really furious, and the way the other wives drew away, she must be hell on heels. Joey didn't envy Mark. He smiled weakly and thanked the woman. It was so embarrassing to hear these women start dishing their husbands, and so embarrassing to pee with them all here. When he got out, a VP asked him to dance. Joey looked desperately around. Help! He silently whispered to the gods of luck, and they, the swines, turned their backs on him with a wink and a smile. He made himself smile his mom's sweet smile, and after some confusion on who should lead, away they went. First the man stepped on his toes in their fragile shoe. Ouch! Sorry, the man said. He wondered what was wrong. Miranda Richardson usually was a good dancer. She might still be flustered. He wondered what Mark had done. By the way, why did you hit Mark? Joey had been thinking of an answer to this question. He fondled my privates, he said primly. As young as he was, Joey knew enough of the world to know that no one would believe Mark's denials. He suppressed a snicker. It would serve the dirty old man right. Nobody who molested his mom could get away with it. Then he stepped on the VP's toes. Ouch, the man said. No, don't apologize, you just got me back. Fair is fair. Joey relaxed and found when he did he could dance her better. He danced with a few more men who were on the best behavior, remembering what he had done to good old Mark. They were surprised. Mrs. Richardson could actually hold a conversation about important matters like sports. Usually she went on about her dull teaching job or her kids. You're a lucky man, Brian, said the VP. How's that? Your wife knows sports. You must have many great times with her watching football and baseball. She is a really enthusiastic and knowledgeable sports lover. My wife? Brian said, naturally incredulous, but the man didn't hear but moved away. Brian looked across at his wife chatting with Mike, the treasurer of the union. The man seemed actually interested in what she told him instead of having the usual glassy-eyed stare of a man talking to a woman. What gives? And why was Miranda so clumsy? Damn it, she just knocked over a small table. On the way home he was silent, trying to figure out what was going. Joey was grateful for the respite. If only he could somehow get to his room without either his mom or dad seeing two Mirandas. He wished he had gone to church more, than God might be more inclined to hear the silent prayers. It was a little after 1 a.m. when they arrived home. Joey's feet hurt. Why do women wear these damn things anyway, he wondered. Gratefully he kicked them off, do exactly what his mother would have done. Then the best words he ever heard came from his dad. You go up first, honey, and check on the kids. I'll be up shortly. The VP brought up some rule changes and I'll have to see if they're doable in the contract. I'll be up in 15 minutes. He leaned over and Joey was surprised to get a peek on the cheek from his dad. He hadn't done that since Joey was 9, but then Joey hadn't been a worm before. He dashed up the stairs in his stocking feet. He cautiously looked in the room. Mom was asleep and giving off lady-like snores. Luck was with him. He silently thanked God and promised he would keep his promise and go to church more. Joey undressed hurriedly and placed his mom's gown on her clothes tree and then slipped out into the hallway. Now if he could just get into his room. He heard his dad's ponderous tread. He ran for it and just made it. He locked his door and leaned against it. Brian stopped at the scene in the bedroom. How? He was wondering, how did his wife get undressed, remove her makeup and fall asleep so quickly? He shook his head. Well, it wasn't important. Anyway, he might have spent more time than he thought looking at the contract. Joey somehow made himself get up early and dash for the vacant house. He then plopped down in the recliner and fell asleep. The next morning Ryan naturally discussed the party with his wife. I talked to Mark and he will be on his best behavior or I will personally sock him and I hit harder than you, Brian said, smiling. Miranda was naturally puzzled. What are you talking about? I wasn't at the party. You left without me, so I thought you didn't want me to go. Very funny, Miranda, but I am not laughing. You had a lot to drink, but not that much. By the way, don't drink so much next time. It even affected your table manners and coordination. Anyone watching you would think you never wore high heels before that night. Now it was Miranda's turn not to be amused. Look, just because I didn't ready fast enough to please Mr. Efficiency is no reason to make fun of me like this. You know perfectly well I wasn't there. Brian stared at his wife. She was serious. You're nuts, he said graciously. First Brian showed her where she had kicked off her heels. They were still there. He took her upstairs and pointed at her worn evening gown on the clothes tree and her stockings carelessly thrown on the floor. Miranda stared open-mouthed. Call your friend Trudy and ask her if you were there. Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants. She got her friend on the phone. I'm glad you called, Miranda dear. I want you to know I gave Mark hell for touching your privates. The very idea that he could think he could away with that is crazy. To punish him, I'm going to sell his Rams tickets for the rest of the season. Can you imagine? The man says he barely pinched you and there were half a dozen people who saw him do it. By the way, you sure must have brushed up on your sports. All the men were so impressed. It's a good idea. I will do the same, and next year I'll get to watch those men staring about my sports knowledge. Miranda hardly heard the rest of the conversation. She called another woman she knew who was going. She got the same story. Was she losing her mind? Did she have another personality that slugged men? She wished she could remember doing it. Mark wasn't called the octopus for nothing, and knew sports and had trouble with high heels and had bad table manners. The next day her husband triumphantly produced photographic evidence of her presence and Miranda stopped arguing with her husband. She didn't want to see some shrink and be put away. Monday Joey breathed again. He was undiscovered. To celebrate, he took his cute girlfriend Grace out for pizza and to a movie. They made out later to his pleasure. He was lucky his tall, blonde girlfriend Grace was really hot. And she really liked him. But I bet she would drop him faster than a politician could lie if she found he would turn into his mom at the rising of the full moon. He laughed. Women. She was already talking of marriage after college, and this was way too soon for him. Every chance he got he went over to Mrs. A and pleaded. And got nowhere. He needed help, something that might break a spell. He couldn't go on like this forever. Sooner or later he would be caught. His only option was to run away from home, and he sure didn't want to do that. His friend Larry was a dungeon master and knew a lot of magic stuff. He would ask him. Larry, do you know how a spell can be broke? He asked Larry at the boys' house. Don't know that it can. I'll look it up in my books. Not as easy spell to break. Are you involved in a D&D game I'm not playing? Sort of. Well, maybe your character can bite the caster, which would then turn him more. 2. It might break the spell or at least force the magic user to give them both a reverse spell. Thanks. It just might work. Larry shrugged. It's kind of an old trick, but it do the job. Larry went to Mrs. A's house. Maybe now you will stop criticizing my work. If I admit you're better than Rawlings, will you remove the curse? Never. She shook her head. Desperately Joey leaned forward and bit her hard. Boy, could she cuss. You stupid brat, do you know what you've done? Rubbing her bleeding arm. He grinned. Tell me? Biting her had really felt good. At the full moon I will turn into you. She shuddered. Serves you right. Maybe now you will change me back? You idiot, I can't reverse the spell. If I could have, I would have done it for you after the first time. I lost my temper and thought there was a reverse spell, but there isn't. There was a sinking feeling in his gut. Now what? Then Joey brightened. Well, at least you can take my place those days. It will make it easier. On whom? She snapped. Me. Despite herself, Mrs. A laughed. Come inside, while I figure out what to do. Well, the upshot was that she called Miranda over and explained the situation. Miranda was not as skeptical as she normally would have been, remembering the party and other weird things like her sister taking about a visit that never took place. In a way, it was a relief, sure, better than being insane. Now what? She asked. Well, since Joey here will be you and I will be Joey, someone needs to be me. You're elected. No fooling around with my husband though. Of course not. Well, okay, I don't see that we have any alternative. In truth, Miranda wouldn't mind a few days away from Brian and the kids and a few days off from teaching. Besides, Alice Ambrester was prettier and had better clothes and drove a sports car. A few hours before the change, they all met at Mrs. A's house in her study. Her husband didn't dare break in on them. They took off their clothes and stared fascinated at each other as the changes began. Soon Joey put on his mom's clothes. His mom's, Mrs. A's. And Mrs. A. Joey's. Anyone looking in the room would have noticed no changes. It would be a lot easier with them helping each other out with knowledge and no duplicates to make things impossible to manage. So Miranda stayed behind pretending to be Alice Ambrester, while the apparent mother and son left to go back to their house. Joey was worried about, well, you know what, with his dad, but Mom had told him how to stop Brian if he got frisky, so Joey stopped worrying. The real Miranda never had to have sex or be bothered with Mr. Ambrester. He was deathly afraid of his wife. It was kinda nice to have a husband afraid of you rather than being afraid of him. And she had the sexiest clothes. Mrs. A brought Joey's grades up and seemed to enjoy playing sports on the days she was at school as Joey. Joey didn't like teaching English on the days he subbed for his mom, but it was kinda cool, especially being able to boss older teens around. He also took advantage, of course, to be mean to his sister the days he was his mom. It drove Katie crazy. Why was her mother tougher on the full moon? Brian noticed 3 days each month his wife was much quieter and her cooking improved. It turned Joey had a natural talent here. Mrs. A especially enjoyed that part, as she could pick out all she wanted and not worry about gaining weight. All three would meet, await the change, and then swap clothes. It became a ritual. Unfortunately, Miranda was not too happy about one aspect. It seems that the sneaky Alice Ambrester cast a spell that made the 3 days of the full moon as always the time when her body has its heaviest period. Joey feels sorry for his poor mom. Now she has to have 2 periods a month. He can feel her pain because everyone once in a while he has part of one for her. But what really makes Joe's mad is that he thinks Mrs. A is getting a little too cozy with his girlfriend. Well, any life, somehow life goes on.